welcome back to my channel. I have a really fun tutorial for you today. This is called the Amalfi bag, and it is named after this beautiful floral accent fabric we used in this bag. It has these really fun cotton webbing straps, and then of course a pocket inside. I think this is probably my most favorite bag that I have made to date as far as, you know, knitting project bags. This would be perfect as like a travel bag or even just a nice cute purse. So let me show you how much can fit inside here. So this project finishes at about 9 inches wide, 7 inches tall, and 10 inches tall and 7 inches deep. And Katie has pulled out my cozy winter shawl just so you can see how much fits in this little tote bag, you guys. It is a great size, perfect for sweaters, small blankets, and apparently the cozy winter shawl fits nicely in there as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this project. Let's go ahead and get started. Supplies for this are super simple. You're going to need a little bit of interfacing, and this is heavyweight interfacing. You can use whatever weight you like. It's actually extra firm stabilizer. Sorry, I don't know, heavyweight, extra firm. You could also use quilt batting if you wanted, or a different level stabilizer if you don't like this. You'll also need some pieces for the bottom of your bag, the top, and then a fun accent print for the center of your bag. And then I just went ahead and used some leftover canvas for my pocket. You'll also need some fabric for your lining, and then you're going to need some kind of strapping material, and then just your regular sewing supplies. So rotary cutter, ruler, self-healing mat, some pins and wonder clips are helpful. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I've set our other supplies aside for right now, and what we're going to work on is the outside of our bag. So we're going to set the top strips aside, and we're just going to attach the center decorative strip to the bottom strip, and we're just going to place those right sides together. If you're new to sewing, the right side is the pretty side of the fabric. The back side, or wrong side, is the not pretty side. And we're just going to lay those down like so. Let me get this other piece out of the way so you can see. Just line them up along this top edge right here. We're just going to stitch down this edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to do the same thing with our second piece here. So we want 2 of these. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to show you which way to press these because it will kind of matter for this bag. And I'm also trying out the new Oliso Home iron, and this thing is like amazing so far. It's the kind where you can set it down and it raises itself back up, and then when you grab it, it lowers. So very nice. I do not have any steam in here, and these are 2 pieces of canvas. So let's see how it does. I do have it set on the linen cotton. It's got these knob adjustments right here, and I've got it set kind of in the middle on the linen cotton. So let's see how it does with some canvas. Now I want to go ahead and press this so towards the printed fabric. We're going to do the same thing when we do the top of our bag. Okay, so we're just going to push that forward and then just press that seam. And this thing is really nice and heavy. Gosh, I feel like that was a really good seam just right off the bat. Just press it from the back a little bit. So far I'm pretty happy with that. That looks pretty good, and this was on canvas, so I'm just going to do the other one really quick. And you just want to press this first before you fold it open because it kind of just helps set the stitches, and I think it just gives you a little bit better crease when you go to press it, but could just be me. Alright, so there's that side, and I do like to run one on the back side as well. If you take your hands off, it just raises up, so very nice. So far, I'm really impressed with this guy. All right, the next thing that we're going to work on is the top of the bag, and before we add these, we want to add our handles. And so what I've done, this is just some really cool kind of, I don't know, roping, like cotton webbing, but it's got like kind of a cooler texture. And I just got this at my local Joann's. And so what I've done is wrapped a piece of Scotch tape. I marked exactly half, and this is what you're going to want to do with whatever you use. So fold it in half, and then you can either just cut this right here along this line, or if your strap is like mine where it's going to kind of fray, throw a piece of Scotch tape around there, and then when you cut it, it'll help keep it together. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut that right in half. There we go. And so now, don't worry about the tape on there. Go ahead and leave that on. It's going to get caught up in our seams, so I just leave that. It makes it a lot easier to sew if you've got some strapping like this. Okay, we're going to set this one aside. And then we're going to start on this one first. And I'm going to go ahead and place my straps 4 inches in from either side. And so I just set my ruler down here, mark it, and add a wonder clip. And then do the same thing to the other side. These don't have to be perfect. You can also put your straps wherever you want. And then we're going to do the same thing to this one. Whatever size, whatever distance in you do on your first one, do that on the second one. And I'm just using my cutting mat now. And then just make sure that you don't accidentally, twist your strap or anything. Just make sure it's nice and straight. Okay, now that our strap is on, we can go ahead and take, we can go ahead and take our other top piece of fabric and just line that up. And then I'm just going to reuse those Wonder Clips to clip together all 3 layers. And then as we're sewing, we're going to take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew down, again, a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch this time. I would do more like 3/8 of an inch or something. And you can even backstitch over this strap if you'd like a little bit. It's probably not too necessary, but if you're concerned about how much weight you're going to be putting in this bag, we're going to do the same thing for this one. And then we'll meet you back here. All right, so here we are, and I just wanted to hopefully show you up close. Hopefully you can see that. After I ran my first stitch, I just went back and just did an extra stitch across those straps just to give them a little bit of extra security. Now, like we pressed before going towards our printed fabric, we're going to want to do the same thing this time so that our handles are kind of, going upwards. If we were to press it this way, that would push our handles going down, and so you can do that. I mean, it's not like a huge deal, but I think it looks a little bit nicer if you press it going this way. And so that's what we are going to do. And I realize I didn't press those like I did the first time, but that's okay. All right, so we have our 2 outside pieces completed now, and we're going to go ahead and add our interfacing. And what you're going to want to do is flip your piece so that it's right side down, and then line up your interfacing along the bottom of the bag, not the top, and you'll see why here in a little bit. You're going to want to line that up, and you can pin it in place. You can also try and use, I like to use 505 temporary adhesive. I'm sorry, I always forget to say this in the supplies list, but it will be linked in the video description below. And if you'll notice, our interfacing only comes up to here, so we've got some extra fabric up here. That is intentional, so do not think that you cut your piece incorrectly. And if you'll notice, if we look at our sample bag here, I wanted the top edge to actually come around and into the inside of the bag. And so that will all work out when we add our lining, so don't worry about that. So go ahead and line that up with the bottom of the bag, and then secure it however you would like. You can, like I said, use pins or Wonder Clips or whatever, just so that it doesn't move around. I'm going to take this over to my machine and just probably run a stitch right along either this light tan piece or right along here. Either way, you just want to run some kind of decorative stitch on here to attach the outside of the bag to the interfacing. And then whatever you do to this side, you're going to want to do the exact same thing to this other piece so that you have 2 identical sides. All right, so I have both of our outsides done, and this is what it should be looking like. And then I just chose to do a stitch on either side of my seam. I just thought it looked nicer, plus it gave me another opportunity to give a little bit more strength to my handle here. But like I said, you can do anything that you like. Now we're going to go ahead and flip these 2 pieces right sides together and just make sure all of your layers are lined up nicely. We're going to take this over to the sewing machine now, and we're going to sew down the left side across the bottom and back up the right side using about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure to leave the top of your bag open at this point. And I am going to throw a couple of Wonder Clips on here. And one thing when I'm doing these bags where they have these stripes on them is I'll probably just take a minute to make sure that these 2 line up, just so that it looks a little bit nicer. If you have to trim it at the bottom or something later, that's not a big deal, but it is nice when these come together. So I'm just going to throw a few Wonder Clips on there, and then we'll just go ahead and sew. Okay, so this is what our bag should be looking like at this point, and we're going to go ahead and just leave it inside out and just set it to the side. All right, so next we're going to start working on the inside of the bag. So here's my lining. I'm going to set that aside for just a second, and we're going to handle this pocket first. All right, so for the pocket, since I'm using canvas, I'm going to go ahead and not worry a whole lot about my raw edges. So I have pressed each of the short edges in one time and then pressed the bottom up once, and then the top I actually folded in. Everything's folded in about 1/4 of an inch. Sorry, I don't think I mentioned that. I folded the top once and then twice so that it gives the top of the pocket just a little bit more stability, and then also since things are going to be coming in and out of it, it helps with fraying. But the sides and the bottom I'm not going to worry about a whole lot. So the first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and just kind of fold this top down. I'm going to use a Wonder Clip just to kind of hold it in place till I get to my sewing machine. And I'm going to start by just running a stitch right down this top just to secure this down. Don't worry about the other side yet. We'll actually do that when we sew them onto our lining. All right, so now that we have the stitch across the top of our pocket, we're going to go ahead and attach it to our lining. And I've placed my pocket about 2 inches down from the top and then just centered it horizontally on our lining piece here. And this is just one piece of lining, I forgot to say that. And I think center is about 3 3/4 of an inch from both sides. And so then what I'm going to do, I also repressed my pocket just to kind of make sure these edges stay nice. But I'm going to go ahead and pin this in place. All right, and then we're going to take it over to our sewing machine, double stitch right here, or back stitch right here. So down the side, all the way across the bottom, and back up the other side, and then back stitch again right here. If you'd like, you can put another seam down the center of this pocket, just so you have 2 instead of 1. Totally up to you. All right, so here's our pocket all nice and attached. And then the next thing we need to do is just make sure that the opening is going towards the top. And now we're gonna just layer both of our lining pieces right sides together. And we're gonna go ahead and sew down both sides and then towards the center. And I would say this is gonna be kind of a pretty thick bag, so I would leave a good like 5 or so inches in between here open for turning our bag, and then make sure to leave this top edge open. Now since we did 1/2 inch on the outside of the bag, we're going to want to do the same for the lining, and I am going to back stitch right here as well. Okay, so here comes the fun part. We're going to box the bottoms of our bag, and whatever size you do on the outside, do the same thing on the lining. I'm gonna go ahead and do the outside of the bag first. And you guys have probably seen me do this a million times, but I'm going to place my hands through the inside of my bag here, and then probably have to use your hand to kind of help push that down in the center. And you're going to make a nice little sandwich here like this. And then we're going to go ahead and turn it sideways. And then I'm going to be lining up these side seams right here. And then you're just going to want to kind of straighten everything out from that point on. And take your time on this part. That way your seams will all line up nicely. The goal is to get this seam and this seam lined up together. And you can really feel it when you're doing this. So everything just should be nice and smooth at this point. Okay, we're just gonna turn it this way because it's a little bit easier for me there. And then I'm gonna grab my ruler here. I'm going to put my 3.5 inch center point right here, and this diagonal line is what we're gonna be working with. And I'm just going to put the diagonal line right along the diagonal of my fabric here, and the 3.5 point right here, right at the tip of my point right here, where my stitch line is. I'm just going to line it up like that, and then I'm going to draw a line across my bag here. Okay, and then we're going to take this to the sewing machine. I'm going to back stitch at the stop and at the start, And we're gonna sew right along this line. And then when we're done, we're going to cut about a ½ inch or so away from our stitch line. All right, so now that that's marked, we can put a couple of wonder clips on there just to keep it in place. Fold it out of the way, and then we're gonna do the same thing on this corner, and we are going to use the same technique on the lining as well. Okay, so we've got our outside of our bag, and we've got our lining here, and we can just set this lining aside for just a second. Let's go ahead and turn the right side of our outside of our bag right side out. Okay, so it should be looking something like this, and then we've got this nice boxy bottom down here on the bottom. Now we're going to go ahead and fold this in just a little bit just to help us out. So just fold that boxed bottom portion in. We're also going to fold it up just a little bit, but before we do that, let's put our handles down inside. This is going to be a lot of stuff to kind of finagle. Put this handle down inside as well, because this whole thing is going to be going inside of our lining. So the next step, carefully put this bag inside here, making sure your handles are all in and everything's kind of out of the way. This is a little bit finicky because our lining is actually smaller than the outside of our bag, which is a little bit unusual, but it'll give us that really nice edge. All right, now once it's kind of in there, what you're going to want to do is line up these side seams, and I'm just going to put a wonder clip there. Then I'm going to do my other side seam. That'll keep everything kind of straightened out so that we can go through and then clip the rest of the bag down. Okay, and then take this opportunity to maybe just kind of straighten out this bag in here. Make sure the handles are out of the way. And then go ahead and just clip or pin the rest of the way down your edges. All right, once you've got it pinned all the way around the outside of your bag, we're going to take this over to the sewing machine, and using about a ½ inch, somewhere between a 1/4 and a ½ inch seam allowance, you're going to sew all the way around your bag to close it all up. Alrighty, here comes the fun. We're going to carefully, because there's a lot of stuff inside this lining, open up our little opening down here and gently coax the rest of the bag through the opening. Take your time. Whew. Lovely. Okay, so we should have something that looks similar to this at this point. The right side of your bag, the right side of your lining should be showing. And then we've got this little opening here that we just pulled everything through. And so you're going to want to just take that over to your ironing board or finger press it in about a 1/4 inch. It should naturally fall that way because we've already sewn along this seam prior. But just press it nicely and then take this over to your sewing machine and just run a really quick stitch right down here to close up this opening. My hole has been closed up, and I always just kind of tug on it just to double check, because I get as close as I can to this seam and I just don't want to go over the edge, and I think this bag is going to be a gift, so I want to make sure I do a good job. The other thing I've done is gone through and just clipped off any little threads that might be hanging out of the way. Then we're gonna go ahead and tuck in our lining, and you want to tuck the lining all the way down to where you can feel the interfacing. Remember how the canvas went over the top of the interfacing? So you want to just carefully adjust your lining so that it's going right over the top of this interfacing, nice and snug. I'm even going to probably take this over to my ironing board and just press along this edge as well. And then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and just run a stitch all the way around the top of this bag, and then we'll be done. That'll give it a nice finished look, and it will also keep our lining in place down inside of our bag. By the way, I wanted to give a quick shout out to this new Oliso iron that I'm trying out. I did use the full-size iron today on this project, and I absolutely loved it. I did not use steam at all, and all of my creases were nice and crisp. I'm still gonna try out that little baby over there, and I will do a full review of this product for you coming soon, so stay tuned for that. All right guys, here is our finished tote. As you can see, it's a really good size. I even have a project that I have been working on that I've had stored in this bag. As you can see, there's plenty of room in this bag for this nice bulky project, and I always have my knitting needle case in here, all my little notions and my pattern and everything. So there you go. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you do, please make sure to thumbs up and subscribe. That way I know to keep making fun projects for you like this. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time. We're going to go ahead and run a stitch. You can, do whatever. Hey, stop it. And take, nope. We can go ahead and take, smile. Look at me, maybe. There you go.